So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio.
Is this mic on? I think I've got some spit up on my shirt or something. This is Timmerie. I'm back. Yes, I had my baby. I'm really excited to be with you. It's been a little while since I've been behind the mic, and I thought it was fitting to take a brief break from maternity leave or to jump back in for this day on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. 48 years of legalized abortion. Can you believe it? I mean, here we are. Who would have thought? I know so many people who have given so much time and effort, spending years in prison, in jail, on sidewalks, counseling day after day, and here they are. They thought that this would be something that would be made illegal within a couple years of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade that was passed really legalizing abortion in 1973, a Supreme Court decision, really legislating from the bench, making it so that there was unfettered access to abortion between the two Supreme Court decisions of Roe versus Wade and less widely known Doe versus Bolton. So many people believe or are shocked when they hear that abortion's legal through all 9 months of a woman's pregnancy. They maybe didn't realize it. They thought, oh, maybe just the first trimester. They didn't put two and two together in terms of the long-term and widespread impact that abortion would have. Today's broadcast of Trending is underwritten by SolidarityHealthShare.org, offering simple and affordable health care for you and your family. SolidarityHealthShare.org. Finish this sentence. I'm pro-life, but maybe you've made an exception in the past. Maybe there's an exception now that you still kind of have, but you don't really want to bring up because you know your pro-life and Catholic friends might be a little shocked by what you have to say. Or maybe you have a friend or family member who you just can't quite convince them to be pro-life no matter what, without any exceptions whatsoever. If you'd like to join the conversation today, the number's 1-888-914-9149, or as always, you can reach me on social media. Just head over to relevantradio.com/trending to connect and ask your question. What's next? We have a new president. Our United States now has had the inauguration. President Joe Biden is a Catholic. What does that mean for the pro-life position? I know many who would like to say he's not a Catholic, but what's to come next? And in fact, did you know that since the very beginning of abortion being made legal through Roe versus Wade, there was specifically a strategy, a Catholic strategy to split Catholic opinion, because they knew that abortion would never become a cultural norm or a law in this nation or from state to state without widespread Catholic support. So what was that Catholic strategy, and how does it still plague us now? It's something to discuss as we now have a Catholic president who is not pro-life. So often people will come up to me and say, I thought everyone wanted abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. Well, I'll say I don't want abortion to exist at all. I don't want it to be legal. And of course, we want any medical procedure to be safe. So some people actually believe that in order to be pro-life, it means that you advocate for abortion to be safe, legal, and rare, but that's not the case. And we'll discuss this more as the day goes on today, but here's what's interesting. The pro-abortion movement used to use these words, especially in the 90s, safe, legal, and rare, right? But now they want universal access to abortion. You don't hear them talking about safety ever with regard to abortion. In fact, they overrule safety laws in the name of access. We saw this happen in Texas, and we've seen it happen in many other states where abortion has come over the safety of a so-called simple medical procedure, as they say, yet they can't quite meet basic medical standards. So here's something that we should be keeping our eyes on over the coming years. There was a Supreme Court decision that was made just a couple weeks ago. It was Food and Drug Administration versus American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, also known as FDA versus ACOG. Now, this was an excellent ruling coming out from SCOTUS. It really emphasized the fact that abortion should be essentially safe healthcare if we're going to have it. Here's why. As you may know, there is more than one type of an abortion. There's a chemical abortion, which is a couple sets of pills known as RU46, mifepristone, among other things. You take one pill inside the abortion clinic and then you're sent on your way to take the second pill. The first pill essentially cuts off all nutrition for the baby, and then the second pill essentially causes for that baby to come out, to create a so-called spontaneous miscarriage, to create that miscarriage where now the baby has not only died, been killed, but has now been delivered at home in an absolute blood show. In fact, the workers in the abortion clinics will say, "Flesh don't look," to the patients as they leave with their second set of pills. Now, if you don't know this, there is such a thing as abortionpillreversal.com. Again, that's abortionpillreversal.com. If you or someone you know has taken the abortion pill and they change their mind, it's not too late. And in fact, there's a network of doctors across the nation who are able to administer the protocol to help save a baby after that abortion process has begun. Now, this chemical pill abortion is really meant to be in the first trimester, just within the first 8 to 10 weeks. Unfortunately, it's often used after that. Now, what happened was, in a Supreme Court decision of a couple weeks ago, what happened was there was, last summer, kind of using the guise of COVID, a district judge, Theodore Chong of Maryland, basically said, hey, we need to have access for mifepristone, RU46, the abortion pill. And so he kind of tried to overrule things having to do with safety concerning the pill, so that basically you didn't have to go to a doctor's office in order to have access to abortion. Well, the Trump administration appealed the federal judge's ruling, and really this ended up going to the Supreme Court. And what the Supreme Court ended up emphasizing is that people have access to abortion, and it really kind of put us back in the level of safety that there needed to be some regulations on chemical abortion. The sad thing is that often abortion is left unregulated. And this really causes a problem for women. Over and over again, aren't we supposed to be in favor of safe abortion? But unfortunately, we aren't. And I think this is one of the opportunities, whether you have a friend who's pro-life or pro-abortion, you can talk about how this Supreme Court decision was a good decision, because it is emphasizing to an extent that there's already plenty of access to abortion, and that we don't need to give out-of-office, medical supervision access to abortion. Now, here's the reason I'm bringing this Supreme Court ruling up. Because the pro-abortion, and really the Democrat Party that has within their party platform the abortion stance of being pro-abortion with no restrictions whatsoever, have chosen over and over again to emphasize various laws that they want to implement in the coming years. And one of the things we'll discuss a little later on has to do with webcam medicine. But here's why this RU46 abortion is so important. Because it's less expensive for Planned Parenthood and the other abortion clinics to administer a chemical out-of-office procedure. It's not a procedure, it's a chemical abortion. It's a couple of pills. It's less expensive for them, and it can increase their abortion numbers and their bottom line and their income. But what's sad is that this really is going back to so-called what they believed, which wasn't true, a back alley abortion. Totally unregulated abortion. You see, many people are advocating, unfortunately, for the FDA to decrease regulations on mifepristone RU46 abortions. And so what happened back at the very end of the Clinton administration, they very quickly pushed through FDA approval for abortion through RU46. But what we hadn't seen was how that regulation was going to occur. And so what's going to happen here in the coming years is there are two things that are going to happen. We're going to see a push for RU46 abortions to be deregulated so that people can have access to them basically the same way that you would have access to an Amazon package. You don't have to go to a doctor to get it. You can briefly meet with someone perhaps online, this telemedicine type of abortion, and you can have it mailed to you just like you'd have an Amazon package at the convenience of your door. Not only that, we're going to see an emphasis in telemedicine to help make this normal. Why? Because like in California, they're pushing very hard for telemedicine where Planned Parenthood can just have that phone application. They're in the back pocket of young teenagers, young adults, and women who believe they have no other options, and they can quickly have access to the abortion they want through just a couple of pills. Again, there's no regulation and oversight. And so this is something we are going to see in the coming years. Yet I'll say this, there are great dangers in terms of safety. There's danger because RU46 mifepristone has some pretty scary consequences, such as hemorrhaging, infection. There's also the psychological impact of women being alone through this procedure. People such as Abby Johnson and many others have shared what an isolating experience this has been. But also, RU46 doesn't check if the woman has an ectopic pregnancy, of which a woman can actually die from, as can the baby. In fact, with my baby girl I just had, they thought I had an ectopic pregnancy. As someone who's pro-life, that was the worst possible circumstance I could face because I knew there was no chance for her if that was the case, or for both of us at the same time. So with ectopic pregnancies, we're actually seeing this has created a serious issue for the health of individuals. Why? Because if it's not detected that there's an ectopic pregnancy, both the mom and baby can die. But of course, these deaths are not being related back to RU46 abortion pills and so forth. In addition to that, we are seeing an increase in ectopic pregnancies due to many hormonal complications and long-term contraception use that can lead to an increase in ectopic pregnancies. There's much more to discuss as we now have a majority pro-abortion Democrat Party in the House, Senate, and taking our presidency. This is a serious cause for concern. There have been many wins for life and great things we can do in the years to come, but we need to be aware of what's up in the coming days, weeks, and years. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie. It's great to be live and back with you. My guests today joining me are from the Knights of Columbus here in California. Many in-person live events marking the anniversary of Roe v. Wade have been canceled due to COVID, but we're seeing an uptake in online programs. We'll talk to you about how you can be involved in the marches and walks for life across the nation. But in the meantime, the California State Chaplain of the Knights of Columbus, Father Neneman, has joined me, as well as the State Deputy, Stephen Bolton. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us to discuss the 9 days of prayer, the Novena for Life, that you're also live streaming events for in the evening. Welcome to Trending.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you. Congratulations on the baby.
Thank you so much. We're excited. I don't think I spit up today, but I did earlier. Can you share with us a little bit, Father Neneman, how this novena can help us grow in our faith, efforts for life, and really making an intercession for the unborn? Some people might feel like praying at home might not do anything, but why will it?
You know, with the pandemic, so many people are praying at home. And rather than look at that as something that's a negative, it's actually a positive. And it's the direction that the Holy Spirit has sent us during this pandemic. And so I don't think, number one, we should be afraid where we pray. And quite frankly, how we pray is the fact that we are praying and that we are honoring the Lord, the giver of life, even in the midst of our homes or on the drive home from work or in your office cubicle. That's the beauty of prayer.
Amen. And that's a reminder for all of us that God's intercession changes things. I mean, he sent his only son to intercede in time and space for each of us. And so sometimes when it's easy to feel maybe distant or removed because we are sitting at home this year during the anniversary of Roe versus Wade, our fasting and our prayer can make a difference. Perhaps just not in the ways we know. Yeah, absolutely. So why a novena for life? This 9-day novena, if you're just joining us, the novena actually started yesterday. So share with us a little bit about the novena and what made you decide to promote this through the California State Knights of Columbus.
The California State Knights of Columbus and my worthy brother Steve can share with you some more pertinent information. You know, we are 70,000, 75,000 strong across California. So that's one voice that is quite loud. the novena itself is wrapped around all of what we call faith in action life programs, not only dealing with head-on the scourge of abortion, but also praying and marching, praying with the Special Olympics and being involved in that, praying and providing ultrasound machines in clinics, praying for Christian relief services around the world, praying for masses with people with special needs, supporting pregnancy and life centers, and again, just supporting the message of Our Lady of Guadalupe through a special program we have called the Silver Rose Program.
If you want to learn more about the Novena for Life, that's not too late to join, especially if you feel like there's not something that you're able to do this year. You're not participating in a walk in person. We'll talk about various options for other ways you can get involved, but you can check out californianights.org/Novena for Life, or you can just head over to californianights.org, and on the right side, you'll see that Novena for Life tab. Now, share with me, Father Neneman, how have you seen successes over the last few years in the pro-life debate and also in making strides to win? So both in kind of the cultural debate, but then at the same time, the legal strides we've made.
That is a loaded question, and there's so many tentacles to it. I think from my perspective, the debate is being won by the grace of knowledge and knowing, using the technology that we have and understanding when we are given this beautiful gift of life and carrying it through to be born. And we're using that in a wonderful way and educating so many people as to what this beautiful gift of being co-creators with Christ, what it means and how to manage that in a beautiful, beautiful way that God intended.
You're listening to Trending with Timmerie. Joining me are the California Knights of Columbus to discuss their Novena for Life. Now, we've seen, due to COVID-19, all year round in 2020 and now into 2021, pro-life efforts in person have either been prevented from taking place or many people have been afraid of participating in person. Now we've had the cancellation of various rallies. The March for Life is completely online. The Walk for Life in San Francisco is in person with no rally, and there are other limited events occurring. Can you share with me how the Knights of Columbus have continued to stay active in the pro-life movement over the last year in the face of these restrictions?
Not only San Francisco, but we also are involved in the One Life LA walk. San Diego, the Diocese of San Diego had their walk last week, and they have another beautiful event coming up next week called the Caravan for Life. And the Knights keep growing, and the participation through the Knights of Catholics and non-Catholics is growing. The message is getting out there, and so the Knights provide a channel, an avenue, an invitation to be part of these walks, whether they're in person or they're virtual, that we keep giving that invitation, and we allow the people to grab a hold of it and learn and grow both mentally, spiritually, at their own pace.
Excellent. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for everything you are doing on the front for life. Again, you can join the Novena for Life by heading over to californianights.org. That's Father John Neneman. And we also have our state deputy for the Knights of Columbus, Stephen Bolton. Thank you for joining me. If you're interested in getting involved in a pro-life walk or a digital event, again, just a little bit of information. The March for Life, the National March for Life in Washington, D.C., is a online virtual event. There are some people walking in person, but they're representatives of various pro-life and pro-life advocacy groups. And that's taking place on the 29th of this month. We'll have coverage of that here on Relevant Radio. You can find that at marchforlife.org. There's also One Life LA, that's in Los Angeles, here in Southern California. You can find out more at onelifela.org. People are marching on Saturday the 23rd. They have a great lineup of speakers online. And actually, that's completely online. It's a digital march, And then you have the Walk for Life West Coast. Find them at walkforlifewestcoast.com. They are walking in person, just no rally there in San Francisco. We'll post links online. The Relevant Radio studio line is sponsored by Catholic Order of Foresters. Information about employment opportunities and their flexible premium life insurance plans are available at relevantradio.com/forester.
We're talking about what you're thinking about. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
I'm back. Timmerie here behind the mic for a special episode on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. It's a day that we need to really be prepared to dig in. It's a tough day in the face of a Senate, Congress, and President who are the majority Democrat, whose platform is pro-abortion. We have a lot of work to do in the coming years, not just on the legal front, but again, it comes back to the culture war. It comes back to the individual conversations we have changing hearts and minds. I was talking to someone the other day who I thought was 100% pro-life. And I heard this: I'm pro-life, but... And the exception just utterly dismayed me. And so often, I think that people do have these exceptions that they don't quite want to share, or they find themselves in a particular circumstance and they make the exception. In fact, having worked for years in the crisis pregnancy centers, I would even see within strong Catholic communities and Catholic families, a young girl, teenager, or even early 20s, pregnant outside of wedlock, and the parents, the pro-life Catholic parents, even surprise themselves by encouraging an abortion because of the embarrassment it would bring to the family, or because they didn't want that to happen to their kid, to quote-unquote ruin or disrupt their kid's life. And so we have to really find that consistent life ethic, and we'll talk about that, whether for ourselves or helping others to get there. Finish the sentence: I'm pro-life, but we'd love to hear from you. The number's 1-888-914-9149. The March for Life in Washington, D.C. will not take place in person. They will have a digital event on the 29th. The Walk for Life West Coast, there will be no rally, but is taking place in person in San Francisco on the 23rd. People are walking. If you are nearby, please ponder participating. There are also other online events taking place, including for the March for Life, and One Life LA is occurring online on the 23rd as well. But just because many people are not able to be together in person, that doesn't mean we can't make an impact for life and really work toward the end of legal abortion in the United States. It's important that we continue to stand together, and we're asking you to join us here at Relevant Radio in praying and fasting this coming Friday, the 28th. Head over to relevantradio.com or the Relevant Radio app and click on #FastForLife banner to sign up to let us know that you're praying and fasting for an end to abortion in the United States. You can be sure to share with others, and if you can't fast, there are other alternatives that you can use to offer up a sacrifice for the unborn. And please share this Fast for Life on social media as well. Just head over to relevantradio.com and click the Fast for Life banner, either on the website or on the Relevant Radio app. So we have a pro-abortion president who's Catholic. A number of people have written to me saying, well, maybe he's strategic. He's Catholic, and he's said in the past that he's personally pro-life, but he is politically pro-abortion or pro-choice. And many people have been upset because people say, well, he's not Catholic if he's not pro-life. And there have been, as some might say, brutal attacks of his pro-abortion stance. Justifiably so. He's a leader of our nation, and he says he's Catholic. And we want to see that he is pro-life. We want to see that he's not for the ending of innocent human life in the womb, and we want to see that he is for women, because women deserve better than abortion. They deserve better than RU-46 chemical abortions, whether it begins in a medical office or delivered via package to their front door. We want to see better for women, that not only basic health standards are being met for medical care, but that women don't have to go through post-abortion syndrome and the long-term impact that abortion has. I know so many women at various stages in life, but I'd like to speak in particular about the end of their lives. Those last years, as they begin to age, as they face the fact that all those years ago they had the abortion. And it's something that plagues them and traumatizes them, and they struggle and suffer through in those final years. They work to make atonement for, work to make sense of, to no longer hate themselves or be frustrated with themselves for the decisions they have made. President Joe Biden, do you recognize that? Do you know the stories of these women? That's one of the questions I have. But here's what's interesting. It comes back to the Catholic conversation. Did you know, since the very beginning of Roe versus Wade and the debate that pushed to legalize it through the Supreme Court's decision, that there was a specific Catholic strategy? That the pro-abortion movement knew that if they couldn't break up the Catholic opinion on abortion and the Catholic voting bloc on abortion, that abortion would not become the law of the land and would not remain so today. You have politicians such as Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden who say, I'm personally, or may say, I don't even know if all of them say this anymore, I'm personally pro-life, but I still am in favor of pro-abortion laws. I'm still pro-choice for other people to choose. But here's what's interesting. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who was one of the major advocates behind Roe versus Wade and the abortion movement, who converted to Catholicism and the pro-life position, worked to undo the many lies that were told and even the lies written into the Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. He actually shared after his conversion about the Catholic strategy that he and others developed. The Catholic strategy had 4 parts, and it is used to this day by the pro-abortion movement. To blame, that is, if there's a death of a woman or if anything goes wrong with a woman with regard to abortion, that you blame the hierarchy of the Catholic Church for having essentially caused or led to that woman's death. So it's those men in cloth who are to blame for women's oppression today. So change the language just a little bit. Again, he's to blame. The priests, the Pope, they're to blame for women's oppression because they're not in favor of women being free. Because in the New World, for example, we saw this in Ireland and we're seeing this in South America as well right now, where there's this push to legalize abortion because that's what it means to be equal. That's what it means to be up with the times, to be no longer oppressed. I have to have access to abortion. So they blame, that is the Catholic Church, for being opposed. So they split the perspective of Catholics by saying, well, you're not allowing freedom and access or equality by following what your hierarchy, the Catholic Church, says. And so they've done a good job of getting Catholics to be like, yeah, we can't kind of blame that maybe the hierarchy of the church is wrong here, and I can separate. Second, NARAL, the National Abortion Rights, they stood with, that's what Bernard Nathanson founded, he worked behind. They emphasized that Catholic politicians and candidates in the media, if they ever softened or turned to a pro-abortion stance, that they really portrayed them in the media. They made sure that people knew this person was Catholic and pro-abortion, or this person was Catholic and pro-life, but they made this exception for abortion. And so what this did is it set up models and examples of big-time Catholics that other people could follow after. Just because you're Catholic doesn't mean you're living what the Catholic Church teaches, though. But by creating this media campaign to this day, for example, they did it with now President Joe Biden, people thought they could vote for him because he was Catholic, but differed on the pro-life issue. Then, finally, we see the third point is that NARAL really gave their full support to these Catholic pro-abortion candidates and really helped them to run for election. Why? Because a lot of people are Catholic. A lot of people are people of faith. And if someone has a Christian Catholic title behind their name, some people really like that. And they want to support someone who they believe has morals, even if that person's making exceptions, such as on the issue of abortion. And finally, here's the thing. we saw that Bernard Nathanson and NARAL really implemented the Catholic straddle, as Bernard Nathanson referred to it as, which essentially targeted Catholics to be on this line where they would say, I'm personally against abortion, but I believe women should have a right to choose. I'm going to support a pro-abortion candidate. And in fact, Dr. Bernard Nathanson called this the most brilliant political strategy of all time. We're coming up on 50 years of legalized abortion in the United States. We went from a nation who had pro-life laws in the majority of our states protecting life. And then just like that, in an instant, not only do we have legalized abortion, but legalized abortion across the nation. This Catholic strategy to blame the hierarchy, to emphasize Catholics who are pro-abortion or make exceptions for abortion, and then to support them in the media, and then to straddle that line to say, I'm pro-life, but I believe others should choose, or I believe I should be able to vote for whoever I want. This is what has led to a radically pro-abortion nation here in the United States. This is why, in fact, Vice President Kamala Harris, during debates, would emphasize that Joe Biden was a person of faith, of morals, and of character. Because she knew, just like the abortion movement, that if you could emphasize this about Joe Biden being a Catholic who's pro-abortion, that people would go along with it. And so how are we going to change the public opinion? How are we going to overcome people who are, what my producer, I think Karen just said, virtue signaling essentially in order to win people to their perspective? And let me just make a comment about Vice President Kamala Harris. So since the beginning of the San Francisco Walk for Life, I've been at, I think, every Walk for Life in San Francisco. It's the largest walk after the March for Life that's occurred since 2005. And back in 2005, 16 years ago, we had in San Francisco, Kamala Harris was a district attorney. And when that very first Walk for Life occurred, I was there. I was actually auditioning for the San Francisco Ballet Company at the time for their summer program. I auditioned maybe 1 hour after the Walk for Life. I was still in my teen years, and I had been involved in the pro-life movement, been at my mom's side since I was a little kid in front of the abortion clinic. And I had never seen so much hatred and animosity. The moment for violence was so close and ripe. That first Walk for Life, nothing violent occurred. There was a line of SWAT team members between the pro-life walkers and the pro-abortion, or you could even just say group of anarchists there on the streets. People were literally fornicating on the streets. You had people dressed up as priests and nuns, vulgar attire, signs that you wouldn't even imagine. I had a condom thrown in my face. They were throwing condoms at people, and I'm talking about used condoms as well. It was horrible. And you know, part of the reason why they were out there, it was the first time I really felt like I saw evil face to face. It was because now Vice President Kamala Harris, then District Attorney of San Francisco, incited people to physically come out against the pro-life walkers, the peaceful pro-life walkers on the streets of San Francisco. She antagonized them to go there and to encourage that. And I tell you, I think that first year, had the police not been there, there was a strong opportunity for violence. And the tension was so intense that if one person stepped over that line, but between the two sides, that could have, sometimes I wonder, I think that sometimes the abortion issue could be the beginning of a civil war here in the United States. If just enough people stepped over. And I mean, look at the last few months, look at the rioting and everything we've seen, look at what's happened. The confusion. People are pretty fueled and heated over the abortion issue. And so I say this with all seriousness. It's the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. It's a day to remind ourselves how important it is for you and I to speak up for life. To understand that there are tactics to split us as Catholics on the issue of abortion. And that if we do not do something, say something, and even overcome our own exceptions, we're not going to see a change. We're going to see the next 4 years continue to increase pro-abortion laws. But if you and I are willing to do things by saving one life at a time through a law that's passed that we help advocate for, through helping in a crisis pregnancy center that's there to open with open arms for women who don't know what to do and think they have no choices. Maybe you'll be there to stand in front of the abortion clinic with a sign that's encouraging women so that that woman drives right by the abortion clinic rather than going in for her abortion. I've seen it happen over and over again. In fact, I'll never forget just one story, and I've had this happen many times. I used to be involved in a lot of street activism, and we were down at Laguna Beach every year in the summer with pro-life signs. And one year someone pulls over on the side of the busy street, Highway 101, and they jump out of their car, and I'm looking, okay, here we go, ready for a debate. And one of the men there with me kind of like walks up to me because he sees, someone's approaching me. And this guy jumps out of his car and he says, "Hey, were you here last year?" I say, "Yes." And he said, "Look at my back seat." And he points to the back seat and he said, "That's my baby. I was going to have an abortion. My girlfriend and I had an abortion scheduled." That was his wife in the front seat. And he said, "Had I not seen your signs last year, she wouldn't be here. And we got married after as well." You know how many times I've been in front of an abortion clinic and I've seen people do the same exact thing, jump out of their car and say, "I drove past because there were people here with signs praying, and I didn't even go in for that appointment." So maybe you're someone who stands on the streets in front of that abortion clinic, and your heart is aching because of the new president we have, because of the pro-abortion laws and what's to come. Remember, there are lives that are saved that you and I never even know about. Prayer changes things. Your presence changes things. Being consistent with your life ethics really does set an example for other people who are straddling that line, trying to make an excuse to be pro-abortion, or who are considering having an abortion. You and I have to be willing to engage in those conversations, be a joyful presence, and be consistent when it comes to the abortion issue. I'll be back in just a moment to discuss more challenges ahead, but also to take on some of those conversations where people talk about, well, I'm pro-life, but this is my exception for abortion. I'll be right back here on Trending with Timmerie.
Timmerie will be right back. You can reach her on Instagram and Twitter at Timmerie. That's Timmerie.
Sponsorship provided by Catholic Singles, an online dating platform for single Catholics looking for virtuous, faithful, and God-filled relationships. Catholic Singles dating app is where members can nurture relationships with other faithful Catholics. The Catholic Singles app.
So, what's trending? Bridging your Catholic faith with your everyday life. You're listening to Trending with Timmerie on Relevant Radio and the Relevant Radio app.
Timmerie here. It's great to be with you. I will be back behind the mic in February, but I joined you today just for the anniversary of Roe versus Wade because we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have seen incredible gains in successes over the last 4 years by having a pro-life administration. It's the truth of the matter. In fact, the RU 486 ruling from the Supreme Court from just a couple weeks ago, why did it go to the Supreme Court? Because the Trump administration pushed back with regard to FDA regulation for chemical abortion. And they insisted to reevaluate whether or not a woman should really be able to have an abortion without having to go into a medical office, to a doctor's office. Those are things that we see are gains for life. For example, we pulled out of the United Nations Population Fund. We pulled out of the Mexico City policy that is funding not only abortion overseas, but also decreasing population through abortion and contraception. Unfortunately, with every administration, whether Republican or Democrat, we see this flip-flop, and we've already seen the flop back to a pro-abortion funding stance with regards to United Nations Population Fund, and we'll see this with the Mexico City policy and others. I want to mention to you a couple other things that are to be expected in the years to come, as well as the fact that if you are 40 years or younger, you're a survivor of what is known as the abortion Holocaust. So many men and women have been aborted, or who would be men and women have been aborted because of the legalization of abortion in the United States. And so many men and women walk with the wounds of abortion. I have friends, extended family members, missing family members who are not here today because of abortion. And so we have to work to be grateful and to do what we can to speak up for those lives that are at risk, to help make atonement for those people who are carrying that wound of an abortion. We have a caller, in fact, Linda from Illinois, who wanted to share that 45 years ago, she made a decision that changed her life. Linda, welcome to Trending.
Well, thank you. Hello. Just wanted to share that I guess I am a success story. When I was 17, my mom and dad helped me. I ended up pregnant, went through Catholic Charities, and had a girl. She's wonderful. I hear from her a couple of times a year, and I feel normal. I don't feel damaged. Yes, it was a hard time, but I guess I'm kind of proud that I did it back then. And my mom and dad knew that it was legal back then. Maybe they thought about it for a half a minute, but they were more aware of the benefits of Catholic Charities. And so really I have them to thank after all these years. So that's my story.
Linda, thank you so much for sharing with us. That is incredible. And, the scariness of the fact that because that was right after Roe versus Wade, there was that second option. You could have had that abortion. And that your baby, 45 years old now, is alive because you chose the option. That is truly an incredible, and I would say heroic thing. It's not easy to choose to place your child for adoption. So thank you so much for sharing. These are the great stories I love to hear. I'll never forget about 4 years ago, I was emceeing the San Diego Walk for Life. And as I'm on stage, I'm looking at this girl who I just introduced through the San Diego Adoption Agency, and she's sharing her pro-life story about how she was here, she was a birth mom, and here was the adoptive mom, and here's their little girl, and I'm looking at the girl, and I'm looking at the woman who's sharing her story about how she placed her baby for adoption, and I get off that stage at the end of the walk, and I look at her, and I say, I think I know you, and she said, I think I know you too, and somehow we put two together. She was the daughter of my hairdresser. And the first time I went to my hairdresser, she kept harassing me about what I do. And I'm sitting here going, oh gosh, you got scissors, you're cutting my hair. I'm going to come out with a hack job. And after everything's said and done, she asks if she can talk to me outside after my haircut. I'm thinking, oh gosh, better stay somewhere public. I don't know how this is going to go. I say, sure. She shares with me, her daughter just told her a couple days before she was pregnant and she was considering an abortion. Within that week, we had her inside of our crisis pregnancy center. She was talking to the counselors with her parents. She chose life. She placed her baby for an adoption. And a couple years later, I'd seen her face once. I've known her mom for years. There they are. Her little girl, the birth parents, the adoptive parents. What you do changes lives. By being willing to talk about these difficult issues, it changes and saves lives. Adoption isn't an easy option. I've been in that counseling room with these girls. And some girls would rather, literally, they know abortion is wrong. They would rather choose to end the life of their child than not be the person to raise their baby. This is why we need to talk more about open adoptions and how this is how many adoptions are today. You can choose to be as involved or as uninvolved as you want to be. I know homes such as Agnus Dei, that is Lamb of God Maternity Home here in Southern California, where they actually are a maternity home specifically for moms who are discerning placing their children for adoption, who are choosing to place that child for adoption. So I want to encourage you, there are so many resources available and options and perspectives that people just don't know about. Briefly, a couple more challenges that are to be expected ahead. I mentioned already the RU46, the chemical abortion debate that we're going to see. We're going to see that we are going to have an increase in access to chemical abortion because there's going to be a push to deregulate it so that you don't have to go to a doctor's office and so that you can receive it through telemedicine. So it's like receiving an Amazon package. It's simple, it's convenient. And here's the reality. The more access there is to abortion, the more abortions there are. The less forethought there is with regard to the option, and the more pain and the more women who suffer post-abortion syndrome. This is not an undue burden to limit access to abortion. In fact, there was a study, a pro-abortion study that was published last year called the Turnaway Study. It was 10 years long, and it monitored what happened to women who would go to obtain an abortion but were turned away because the abortion clinic didn't provide abortions past the gestational age that the baby was, or because the state had a regulation that you couldn't have an abortion at that late in the pregnancy. Guess what happened? The further away from that woman having to keep her baby because she was turned away from having access to abortion, the happier she was with her choice of having had the baby. So when you decrease access, even when someone wants the abortion, you increase happiness. Not that it's easy. There's a difference. We might even say joy. We have a whole hour on Monday talking about this. You increase this peace, this sense of well-being, the sense of right, the sense of connected to God, of doing what's right in the eyes of God, even if it's a difficult day to day. These women who were turned away were grateful that they had the opportunity to have those children. It just took time. And it took not having the option of an abortion. A couple more things we're going to see a change on in the days to come. And this is Timmerie live here on Trending with Timmerie on the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. We're going to see that people are going to push in Congress Women's Health Protection Act to basically enshrine what Roe versus Wade does in giving unfettered access to abortion into federal law. So that if Roe v. Wade is overturned, we have it already written in a different way into federal law. Or we continue to see this fight state to state where it's written into the state constitution. Women's Health Protection Act would protect abortion in all circumstances, including after fetal viability, as laws are passed in various states. It would also give major access to what's known as telemedicine, webcam abortion, where you can give access to, again, that RU46 abortion pill, mifepristone, that I mentioned before. And that is without restrictions. We're also going to see, for the first time, they're going to push to override and repeal the Hyde Amendment. That is to give funding to abortion through basically our federal taxes, forcing federal funding for abortion. Currently, that is protected under the Hyde Amendment, but with a majority being Democrat, that is pro-abortion, that's their party platform, we're going to see, with a majority in the House and Senate, and the presidency, they're going to push to repeal that. And so I want to encourage you, we have to fight. We have to have those one-on-one conversations. We have to speak up when we're in the bathroom at Chipotle and a 13-year-old shares with her friend she's pregnant. She doesn't know how to tell her parents. We have to be willing when we're at a musical and we're sitting next to a couple girls who are talking about engaging in intimacy when they're too young and they don't really get it. And they're talking about so-and-so and what's been happening and how they're considering having abortion. We have to bombard and eavesdrop and engage in those conversations too. We have to be willing to say things when it's uncomfortable, even when your hair might be chopped off, when you're at the dentist's office and they have tools in your mouth and they're asking about what you think about this, that, and the other thing happening in the culture. Or maybe you can ask them. Isn't that a thought? While you're sitting on an airplane? While you're waiting in line at the grocery store? Listen to people. Hear what they think. But here's the challenge ahead for you and I. I'm pro-life, but. Finish the sentence. I'm pro-life, but I believe that people should have a choice as to whether or not they stay pregnant. Is that really a choice, though? There's no choice for the child. There's no future for the child. There's no equality for that child if she's female. And the reality is that women deserve better than abortion. Abortion isn't a choice. Most women who have an abortion believe they had no choice. These are the women that come to the crisis pregnancy centers. These are the women who I've stood in front of that abortion clinic, and many of you have as well, where that woman, that man, they're there because they thought financially there are no options. So many people choose an abortion because of changeable circumstances. Whether it's a boyfriend or a husband who is not excited about the baby. Whether it's financial circumstances, being a 17-year-old, a 15-year-old, or a 22-year-old in college or with college debt. Or someone who has other kids and you find it difficult. Or there may be a health reason. Women deserve better. Some people will say, well, to save the mother's life. Well, the reality is that pregnancy itself is not a disease, and that we don't have most OBGYNs, most of them don't support abortion or perform them because it's not basic women's health care. It's not necessary in order to save a woman's health. I thank you for joining me today. I'll be back soon in February. Today's broadcast of Trending is underwritten by SolidarityHealthShare.org, offering simple and affordable health care for you and your family. SolidarityHealthShare.org.